Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Ask Ron. This is number 12 of these. So I'm glad to be keeping these going. I'm glad you guys are still asking questions, and so far you're still watching. All the questions today came from the same guy. He's a new forum member on MD named Glenn Hill 68. So thanks for the questions, Glenn. Here we go with the first question from Glenn. What do you think of Tribulus? Does it increase testosterone? So there are studies that have shown that it does increase testosterone production in the body, sure. And based on my own personal experience, I used a Tribulus product, and I can't even remember the name of it. It was made by Biotest because I used to write for Testosterone magazine, which became T-Mag, and I believe is a website now called T-Nation. So they had a Tribulus product that I used to get some complimentary product from that biotech, and I used it. Did it work? I do believe I felt a little bit of something. The thing is, if you've used actual testosterone, as I have many times, you can't compare the two. And if you're on real testosterone and injecting something like cypionate, enanthate, sustanon, something like that, you will see and feel a very, very noticeable, significant difference within 2 to 3 weeks. You start gaining weight, a lot of which is water retention, but you start putting on, you get a fuller look, you get stronger, sex drive goes up, you might get a little aggressive. I find I have more energy, but you'll definitely know you're on something. Whereas Tribulus, I honestly don't know if it worked or if it was more of a psychosomatic effect or placebo effect where I thought it was going to work, so I felt a little something. So I don't have a lot to say about it other than that. If you want to try it, go ahead and try it. Maybe it'll work for you. Next question. What do you have pre, intra, and post-workout? Okay, so pre-workout, I always have a pre-workout product. I've been using Super Pump 250 from Gaspari Nutrition. I'll do 2 scoops of that, and I start drinking it 30 minutes before I'm going to start the workout, and typically we'll finish it right before I walk in the gym. So I kind of space it out so I get a time release effect. Every day except for my 2 leg days, so whether I'm doing back, whether I'm doing shoulders, chest, or arms, I also do 30 minutes before the workout, 4 caps of the Plasma Jet product from Gaspari Nutrition, which is a vasodilator, gets the blood flowing so you get a little better pump. I don't bother with it on my leg days because I don't really need any more pump on legs. They get a pretty good pump no matter what I do, and they grow no matter what. So I don't, thank God I got one body part I don't have to really worry about. Intra workout. I was doing for a couple years, faithfully, branched chain aminos. I would drink Aminolast from Gaspari Nutrition or their Hyper Amino product. I stopped maybe 6 months ago, around there, just because it's just too much sweetness for me to be having. I don't like that sweet taste over and over again because the Super Pump, the pre-workout product has a sweet flavoring to it, and any of the flavors do. And I just didn't want more of that while I was training because I kind of I'll start getting sick to my stomach. Post-workout, I've read numerous studies that showed both whey and protein, a combination, both whey and casein proteins were ideal. So I don't do straight whey protein like most people do. I do a combination. So I'll do 30 grams of a whey protein isolate, Precision Protein from Gaspari, for example, is one that I use. Then another 20 grams, or maybe a bit more, of the Myofusion, which is a blend, but it has mostly casein in it. So I'm getting 50 grams of protein combined from whey and casein in there. And with that, typically I will have a piece of fruit, like a banana or an apple or some grapes, some sliced up pineapple. Sometimes we get a pineapple from Costco and my wife will slice it up. Or I'll even do some fruit snacks, just pure sugar, because I don't think it really matters what kind of sugar you get. I know there's studies that show this one or that one's a little better. Personally, I just want to get the sugar back in there, get glycogen, glucose back in me to refill the glycogen stores. I was using, and I still recommend to people, the Glycofuse product from Gaspari Nutrition. I stopped using it because I was a little sensitive to it. It gave me, I'm going to admit it gave me pretty bad gas. And I have a wife at home, I have kids, I have a Shih Tzu, and I don't want to punish them with this horrific gas. So for me, that wasn't a good choice. And, you know, I also feel it's very important to get a meal within an hour to 90 minutes. With me, it's usually somewhere between an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes. I will get chicken rice. So it's either chicken breast and some plain white rice, or it'll be chicken thighs. I don't believe you always have to go chicken breast, unless you're dieting for a show or something. There's a little more fat in the chicken thighs, but a lot more flavor. It's a lot more moist, where chicken breast can tend to be, especially depending if it's grilled, it can tend to be pretty dry. You know, if you're choking that stuff down every day, it can be a little rough. So chicken and rice, my go-to post-workout meal. Next question. If there's one bodybuilder, past or present, you'd like to look like, who would it be and why? So you're probably thinking I'm going to say somebody like Dorian Yates, maybe Ronnie Coleman, Kevin Levrone, Flex Wheeler. I'm fans of all those guys. I watched them all compete. I think they were awesome. Nothing but respect for them. I wouldn't necessarily want to look like them, because that would mean you had to walk around with all that mass. And I don't think it would be very comfortable to walk around with all that mass, especially in their off seasons. I can't imagine it was comfortable being anywhere from 270 to 300 pounds, you know, day to day, just lugging that shit around everywhere. And also because even though the physiques now have become bigger and more extreme than that, even those guys were far too extreme for the average person. And, you know, I don't care what people think, but it's to walk down the street and everyone goes, oh, that is disgusting, or oh, what a juice head. You know, I don't need that. Besides which, the one guy I'd really love to look like, if I could pick anybody, would have been Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. You know, 73, 74, 75, those years. So Arnold was 6'2", competed anywhere between 225 and 240. So, yeah, I'd like to be 6'2", too. Why not? Why not get that while I'm wishing for everything? You know, he had a look that it still looked athletic and functional, comfortable, looked like he could move around. He didn't look uncomfortable. He didn't look like a freak. You know, I'm sure back then it was still quite a bit for people to deal with, but for the most part, you know, people saw him and they said, wow, I want to look like that. The guys and the women would be like, wow, I want that man. Whereas I don't think the guys now get that reaction so much. I mean, that's why all these guys now are going into, the younger guys are mostly going to men's physique and classic physique. I don't think a lot of guys want to look like Big Ramy. I don't think a lot of them want to look like Phil Heath or, you know, Kai Green. Again, nothing but respect for these guys. I think they're awesome. But I don't think most people would want that freakish, cartoonish look. It's just too much. It's exaggerated. And they don't look like they can move. They don't look like they're comfortable. So Arnold, if I could wish for any physique and look like anybody, it would be Arnold. And I've talked to tons of guys. And tons of guys have said the same thing, yeah. And we're all fans of the sport. We go to the shows. We go to the Arnold. We go to the Olympia. We're big fans of these guys that compete today. But honestly, even if I could look like them, if I had the genetics, I don't know. I think I'd rather look like the classic guys now. They look functional, athletic, again, comfortable. It's a healthier look. They probably are healthier, you know, for all those reasons. So, you know, I started out in 87 is when I really fell in love with bodybuilding, 1987. And I did want to look like those guys, which was, you know, Lee Labrada, Rich Gaspari, Lee Haney, Mike Christian. Well, I knew I wasn't going to look like Mike Christian. But those guys had more attainable physiques and still had a flow to them and an athleticism to their look. So that's enough of that question. Last question, if you could change one thing about bodybuilding, what would it be and why? Now you're all expecting me to say, wow, I'd get rid of all these new divisions, or, you know, something about the judging. No, I'm not going there at all. What I would do is, because this is a fantasy, I can do anything I want, I can make any change I want, right? So I'm going to say I would want the drug situation to go back to the way things were, say like in the 80s, you know, that decade. Stop it right there. Now, notice I didn't say that I wish there were no drugs or I wish there was drug testing. I have nothing against moderate steroid use, and I think there's a way to do it that's safer, where the look is still, you know, it's not freakish and cartoony, and the guys are healthier. You know, a lot of these guys from the 70s and 80s are still walking around looking and feeling good, where, you know, we've already lost a lot of guys from the 90s and the 2000s. We're losing, I mean, my God, this year we lost a 26-year-old kid. And you know what? I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming the judges. I'm not blaming the athletes. It is what it is. There's really no one or no, you can't point your finger at any one thing or person and say, that's why we have all these drugs today. It crept up on us. It got more and more as years went by. There was no one big turning point where all of a sudden there was GH, all of a sudden there was insulin, all of a sudden everyone had to be on this frickin' Incralex, IGF-1, all these peptides. There's crazy drugs out there now. They're crazy expensive. Nobody knows what the long-term effects of using them all are. It's synthol, SEOs, another shitstorm that's happened in more recent years in the sport. It's not healthy. It's very expensive. It's made the sport so that, you know, I don't believe that everyone has to use all these things, but why do they? Because everyone else is doing it. That's just athletic people who are very competitive. You can't let someone get an edge over you, or else, you know, I mean, this is an individual sport. It's not a team sport. Only one man wins every contest. So guys do what they think they need to do to win. And if this guy is competing against him, he's using XYZ, and you're only using X, well, you're, oh shit, I guess I'm at a disadvantage because he's on Y and Z and I'm not. So that's the big change I would make, because, like I said, I don't think things were too out of hand back in the 80s. You're going to say, oh, they had GH back then. They were barely getting to GH. It was from freaking cadavers. You know, so I would wish that there was no synthetic GH, no GH of any kind. Let's just say, sorry to all the, you know, dwarf kids out there, but, you know, if there's a drug invented, bodybuilders will get their hands on it. Insulin, I guess you could say the same thing, right? I would just wish that these things had never found our way into the sport, that they weren't part of the sport, because, you know, the sport as it stands today, it's not as healthy as it was years ago. You know, I hate to think that a lot of the guys I know now are going to die young. I hate to think that, you know, maybe things I've done would make me die young. You know, that's a tragedy. You know, we're talking human lives here. We're talking people that are going to leave behind children, wives, girlfriends, parents, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles. You know, anytime someone dies, you got to realize a lot of people are affected for years and years, for the rest of their lives, by that death. You know, I'm sure most of you watching this, if not all of you, know exactly what I'm talking about. So when a bodybuilder passes away, it's a tragedy, but not just for them, but for everyone that knew them and loved them. That person's gone. And if that person died a lot younger because of the things they were doing to be a better bodybuilder, it's rough. It's really rough. So that's the biggest change I would make. The sport would be healthier. The physiques would look more streamlined. We wouldn't have the big guts. You know, back in the 80s, there were no guts. So I know I sound like one of these grouchy old men saying everything was better back in the old days. I'm not saying that. I love a lot of things about the sport today, and I think a lot of things have improved. You know, we have better training equipment, a variety of it. We have much better selection of supplements, food. You know, we have just go to the grocery store now versus 30, 40 years ago. It's night and day, the things that are available to everybody now. So, I mean, I'm not saying we should travel back in time, but that's the one change I would make to the sport, is that there would be none of these drugs in it that exist now beyond just your basic steroids. I think we were fine with basic steroids. Guys in the 70s and 80s looked just fine. They weren't as big. They weren't stepping on stage at 300 pounds with these crazy, giant, round, bubbly muscles. No. But, you know, most of these guys are still with us today and doing pretty well. While I don't think we can say the same for most of these guys competing today, that they're going to be 60, 70 years old, still bebopping around and, you know, high-fiving people. So anyway, that's been Ask Ron number 12. Thanks for watching. Please keep the questions coming. Appreciate it. And follow me on Instagram. Why not? I need more followers. Ron Harris Muscle. Ron Harris Muscle. That's right. I should have at least as many followers as your average chick showing her ass, don't you think? Talk to you later, guys.